I'd like to start by welcoming you all to tonight's Bearcat chat on sports nutrition with our guest speaker, Katie Casey. Katie has a bachelor's degree in dietetics and a master's in sports nutrition and exercise physiology. She holds a ton of different certifications, including being a licensed dietitian nutritionist, a certified sports nutritionist, a licensed health coach, and a personal trainer. Professionally, she has worked in a variety of fields pertaining to nutrition and wellness. She's done research in metabolic testing and exercise, worked with pre- and post-op patients on their nutritional needs, and has worked in community nutrition. More recently, she has worked with professional MMA fighters and is now working in corporate wellness, doing nutrition and exercise counseling. Katie is extremely passionate about health and wellness and carries that into her personal life as an avid marathon runner and kickboxer. She has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to sports nutrition, and I am excited to see what she has for us tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Katie.
Thank you so much, Whitney, for that great intro. Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me today. Welcome to this webinar on nutrition for exercise and sport. I'm so excited to be here. If any of you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to drop them in the chat box. I'll do my best to answer them as I can, and hopefully at the end we can address any of the ones I haven't been able to get to. So let's get started. So on today's agenda, we will go over, an overview of nutrition and the macros, pre and post competition nutrition, and common nutritional challenges that many athletes face. So why talk about sports nutrition? Because eating the right nutrients before and after your competition helps your body perform better during your sport, decreases muscle protein breakdown, increases muscle protein synthesis, which is growth, helps us restore glycogen stores, which is our carbohydrate storage, and enhance recovery. The macronutrients. So these are carbohydrates, fat, and protein. We require them in pretty large amounts for normal daily regular function. They provide nutrients and calories, which means they are energy yielding for normal cellular repair and growth. The micronutrients are like vitamins and minerals, which we require in shorter or smaller amounts. And for the macronutrients, protein and carbohydrate provide 4 calories per gram, fat provides 9. We'll go over what we should know about the macronutrients and why a balanced intake of these vital nutrients are necessary for optimal health and sports performance. Carbohydrates. So these are the body's preferred fuel source during any activity. For majority athletes, it's their most important fuel source. Carbohydrates come in different forms: starch, sugar, and cellulose. So starches would be things like bread, cereals, noodles, pasta, rice. Sugar would be anything from, added sugars and sweets, cakes, sodas. Also natural sugar, like in fruit. And cellulose is another way to say fiber. So out of all these carbohydrates, obviously some of them are much more nutrient dense than others. And carbohydrates should provide about 60 to 70% of your daily intake. So carbohydrates function. Carbohydrates are converted into glucose, which gives us energy, or we store it in our liver and muscle tissues known as glycogen, again, carbohydrate storage. So this gives us the energy and power for higher intensity, shorter duration activities. Depending on the exercise, this could be creatine first, but most exercises or sports, carbohydrate would be the #1 or preferred fuel source. If your body runs out of carbohydrate fuel during exercise, it will burn fat and protein for energy. And this can cause performance levels to drop a bit. This is a normal response. It's not a bad thing, it's completely normal. Not necessarily something that we want to happen though. This is a process called gluconeogenesis, but you don't necessarily want that to happen during your activity. And this could happen if you start exercising without enough glycogen, or if you exercise too intensely for a long period of time, such as, maybe over 1 hour, or if you are exercising for multiple hours without replenishing carbohydrate during your exercise or activity, such as like Gatorades or those gels or goos or something like that. So here are some tips to maintain our fuel source for carbohydrate. We want to start our exercise or competition with glycogen-loaded muscles by eating enough carbohydrate for at least several days before the event, somewhere in between maybe 3 to 7 on average days before. And to replenish energy and delay fatigue, we want to eat additional carbohydrate during the event. Again, like Gatorade, goos and gels, maybe a small piece of fruit, things like that. Protein. So protein gives your body the power to build new tissues and fluid, among other functions. The amount of protein you need depends in part on your fitness and your exercise, the type, the duration, and the intensity. In general, protein should provide about at least 15 to 20% of your daily calories. So this can come from all different sources. All of them count. Animal, plant-based, dairy-based. So meat, beans, legumes, lentils, poultry, eggs, and dairy products all would count as a protein source. Protein's function. So physically active people need more than those who do not exercise. Endurance athletes often burn protein for fuel, as do bodybuilders and other athletes who perform intense strength building activities. Your body burns more protein if you do not consume enough calories to maintain your weight. It can also happen if you eat too little or exercise too much. Your body may use protein for energy if you exercise with low levels of muscle glycogen, or if you do repeated or multiple training sessions without eating more carbohydrate. But when you start with enough muscle glycogen, protein supplies about maybe 5% of your energy. Otherwise, if it's not enough, it could be upwards of maybe 10%. Fats. So we need fat for critical function. Our body cannot, make its own dietary fat. And vitamins A, D, E, and K are fat soluble. So if we don't have enough dietary fat, we actually cannot digest and absorb these nutrients. Also, fatty acids, really important to get from the diet. The biggest number one fat to stay away from is trans fats, because those are genetically modified. So fats function. About 20 to 30% of your daily calories should come from fat, but fat can act as an alternative energy source to glucose. So it actually could be a primary energy source if it's a low intensity activity, or if your glycogen stores completely deplete. So depending on your goals, this might be a preferred fuel source, not typically for sports. This process of using fat as a primary fuel source is called beta oxidation. It's actually a very sustainable fuel source compared to carbohydrate because it lasts much, much longer. So any, slower pace, longer duration activities, this could be a good fuel source. Hydration, probably the most important nutrient during a sporting event. So water comprises about 60% of body weight and is essential for almost every bodily function. We cannot make or store water, so we must replace it with the sweat that we're losing. And we want to drink at least 2 quarts. So that's about 64 ounces of water a day, but athletes certainly need more. Drinking cool water is the best way to really stay hydrated during a workout. Sports drinks are really helpful. If you are exercising very intensely or moderately intense for 1 hour or more, you absolutely want to hydrate with an electrolyte beverage. So again, maybe like a Gatorade or a tablet or something to dissolve in your water. You can also take it in like pill form. Coconut water is another great natural electrolyte you can have. Certainly, if it's more than 1 hour, you want to consider having an electrolyte as well. But be sure to drink, even if you're not thirsty. You will not start to feel thirsty until you've already lost about 2% of your body weight, and that is enough to hurt performance. So really, really get in the habit of drinking. So here are some hydration tips. Drink small amounts of water frequently rather than a large amount at once. Drink cool beverages to lower your core body temperature and reduce sweating. It's helpful to actually track your sweat loss by weighing yourself, like before and after a competition or your workout. Because for every pound lost through sweat, we want to really try to focus on between 16 to 24 ounces of water. And your body should be back to normal after your next workout. A large volume of clear urine is a sign that you're well hydrated. Anything dark, especially if it's like brown in color, could indicate you're dehydrated. But if it's very, very dark, it could be a serious problem and you'd want to contact your doctor immediately. And this can happen when we are really, really dehydrated. If you are not already in the habit, do pay attention to the color of your urine. So event day, some pre-competition nutrition. So what we eat several days before an event directly affects our performance. And the food you eat the day of it can ward off hunger, regulate your blood sugar, and aid in hydration. So replenishing fluids lost during your sport should be your primary concern. But listed here are some guidelines you'd want to follow for pre-competition nutrition. Limit protein and choose leaner sources. Eat a meal higher in carbohydrates. Eat solid foods about 3 to 4 hours before the event and drink liquids 2 to 3 hours before the event. You want to choose easily digestible foods. We'll go over this a bit more later on. And definitely avoid high sugary drinks and food within 1 hour of the event. Aim to drink about 20 ounces of water 1 to 2 hours before exercise and an additional 10 to 15 ounces within 15 to 30 minutes of the event. Drink 3 to 6 ounces of water and or an electrolyte beverage every 10 to 20 minutes throughout the event. So here are some good examples. About 4 hours before, we want to have our carbohydrates between 60 to 70%. So here are some examples: pasta with rice and veggies, a leaner protein. Really, really try to reduce anything fried, high in fat. About 3 hours before, 70 to 75% of our food should be carbohydrate. So we'd want this to be a smaller meal, something like a quick sandwich, nuts and seeds. 2 hours before, about 70 to 80% should be carbohydrate. So something quick like fruit, low in fat, cereal, something like that. And 1 hour before the event, about 85 to 100% should be carbohydrate. And this should be something that can be very easily and quickly digested. So more of a refined, like a white carbohydrate, something, preferably that you can, if not chew easily, like a soft bread, maybe like a liquid if you were to blend something up in like a smoothie or something like that. And if not, you want to really, really, really make sure you're thoroughly chewing your food. So carbohydrate loading, I'm sure you guys have heard of this before. So to avoid running out of carbohydrate during your event, some athletes would load their muscles with glycogen by eating extra carbohydrate and exercise to energy depletion days before the event. And you could do that with these steps. You would exercise to muscle fatigue. You want your workout to be identical to the upcoming event to deplete the right muscles. So very similar to the sporting event that you would be doing. Again, this is anywhere between 3 to 5 days. Number 2, eat a high carbohydrate diet, 70 to 80% carbohydrates, about 10 to 15% protein, and about 10 to 15% fat. And you would do little or no exercise for about 3 days before the event and really just get those glycogen stores there ready to go. So race day nerves. Intense exercise diverts blood flow from the stomach to the working muscles, which can really interfere with digestion. And this can lead to a lot of bloating, cramping, and nausea that we experience during a sporting event. I'm sure all of you here have experienced something like that before. So the following here can help offset some of these common GI problems. You want to choose your pre-workout foods carefully. Limit the amount of fiber and spicy foods and, again, heavy fats that you're having right before an event. If you're choosing a protein, we want a leaner one. Allow time in between eating and exercise, and you want to experiment with the window and also what foods work best for you. That brings us to, you want to eat familiar foods that you know won't upset your stomach. Like low fiber cereals, a low fat or reduced fat milk, something like, again, more white bagel or bread, or a piece of fruit. You want to stick to small portions of something that's easy to digest, again, like a soft bread, pasta, rice. Again, having a maybe more nutrient dense, like a brown rice, could be harder to digest than a white. Liquid meals are generally well tolerated and empty the gut quicker than solid foods. Again, so maybe if you blended some fruit together, had like a smoothie with a low-fat milk or another type of dairy. And sports drinks are also well tolerated, especially right before a training event. So there's no harm in having some Gatorade or something like that for its carbohydrate content and also the electrolytes as well. So it's really important to actually train your gut. And just as you would train for your event, we should train our guts to really best absorb and deliver the fuel that we're feeding it so we can perform our best. So it's actually important that we practice these strategies during training. If we're waiting until race day to try to carbohydrate fuel, it doesn't really give our gut enough time or the capacity to absorb all that nutrition, and will risk GI problems. So it's important to, one, experiment with yourself, and two, really ease into it. Give yourself some time, and stick with the foods that you do well with. And this figure here outlines the methods to do so. Post-competition nutrition. So we want to make sure to replenish our bodies after a workout or a sporting event with water and a small snack pretty much immediately. So between 10 to 30 minutes right after. We want to eat a proper meal, so a well-balanced meal within 1 to 2 hours of our workouts, because this will really help our muscles recover. Let's get the nutrition in quick, and then let's sit down for a meal a couple hours later. We want to hydrate again during and after, especially if we're sweating excessively or our workout is lasting more than 1 hour. We definitely want to consider having an electrolyte beverage or supplement as well. Water-rich fruit is a great way to hydrate. Real whole foods that are not processed actually do contain a good amount of water. So right after a workout, if you're having your small snack between 10 to 30 minutes, an apple, for example, would be a great idea. We can get the good nutrition, a nice snack in, and also get some water as well. We want to aim to consume a 3-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein for our post-workout meal. So this could be like 40 grams of protein and maybe 120 grams of carbohydrate. But we don't want to ignore fat because, like we learned earlier, fat does provide a ton of nutrition and helps us really digest and absorb certain vitamins and minerals. So we want to include that as well. Perhaps in like a moderate amount, but the other days after your workout, absolutely, keep fat, part of your diet as well. Most importantly, we want to choose nutrient density. We want the most bang for our buck. Post-workout, we have to replenish our muscles. We want to really make sure we're getting that nutrition in our system. So vitamins, minerals, all of those things. The most bang for our buck means it's not a ton of calories. It's probably not coming with sugar or refined foods or funny ingredients or chemicals on the labels, especially if it's something that we can't pronounce. So we want to stick to real whole foods, limited amount of ingredients if you do see the ingredients on the back of a package, lower calorie, and a lot of nutrition, a lot of vitamins and minerals. So I think it helps to remember it this way: refuel, rehydrate, and rebuild. So to refuel, carbohydrate-rich foods will help replace your glycogen stores for your next training session. Rehydrate, definitely replace the sweat that you lost. Also include snacks as well. That could be a good source of nutrition and water. And rebuild. So repairing muscle tissue is an important part of recovery. It's generally recommended that we get about or at least 20 grams of protein. It says here within 30 minutes. I kind of like the 10 to 30 minute window. So at least 20 grams between that 10 to 30 minute window post-workout. So that brings us to the next slide. Protein for recovery, so important. So protein, we learned earlier, they are an essential macronutrient. They are the building blocks. Proteins, are made from the building blocks called amino acids. Some protein our bodies can make. There are 9 essential amino acids that must be acquired from the diet. A complete protein source would contain all 9 of those amino acids. So a complete protein source would be found in largely animal-based protein. So they contain all the amino acids that our body cannot make that we must get from food. That's not to say that a vegetarian or plant-based protein source would not contain the essential amino acids, but it wouldn't contain all 9. We can still get all 9 by eating plant-based and vegetarian-based protein sources, but we'd have to include a large variety in order to get all 9. So it does help to eat an animal protein. You might have seen maybe on like protein powders or other supplements that say BCAAs. So these are the branched-chain amino acids. These are actually 3 of the 9 essential amino acids. So all 9, again, are really important for recovery. We do want all 9. The reason why these are promoted often on a lot of packaging is because these 3 of the 9 are kind of like the king aminos when it comes to like recovery. So, if you really want to make sure you're getting your money's worth of a protein powder or some other type of supplement, you might want to compare all the aminos on there and check out the branched chains and see if those are the highest ones. Leucine, isoleucine, and valine are the branched chain ones. So I think that's a nice way to kind of make sure you're getting your money's worth. But otherwise, I think including all 9 essential aminos is a great strategy post-workout. So this chart helps represent how much protein we would want. I would recommend to aim between the medium and typical that's here. So that's about 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, or just under that, so slightly under that. Again, we want to aim to consume a 3-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein for your post-workout meal. And here are some examples. If we have some time to prepare, grilled chicken salad is always great. Salmon and brown rice, as you remember earlier, I mentioned the white rice because it's easier to digest. Certainly post-workout, we can get a more complex carbohydrate in there, good source of protein. Something quick on the go, we can choose a Greek yogurt, which is higher in protein, and a piece of fruit, orange, and a handful of nuts, something like that. So protein timing and recovery. Protein distribution is really important. So we do want to spread it out. Typically in one sitting, depending on your size, a bigger person can probably not digest and absorb more than like 40 grams of protein in one sitting. So kind of keep that in mind. Don't try to have all your protein for one day at once. Spread it out. Again, 40 being on the higher range, 40 grams. The physiological need dictates protein at every meal. So again, depending on the intensity and duration of your workouts and your goals. So whey and casein protein, you might have seen these as well. These are two really good proteins when it comes to replenishing your muscle. So these two proteins are actually the derivatives of milk. So milk is made up of whey and casein, all milk from all different species. Whey, when it's standalone, when it's just whey, enters our bloodstream much more rapidly than casein does. So if we're going to have a protein shake or some type of protein powder to blend with whatever, post-workout, I would recommend a whey. If you are looking for a whey protein powder, I would recommend one. If you just want whey, it should say 100% whey. Nothing else added unless that's something that you want. The casein we digest a lot slower. So also a great protein to aid in recovery, but we just digest it slower. So I would recommend not having this post-workout. I would recommend having this maybe later on at night. Right before bed, something like that, because it wouldn't impede fat burning because we digest it much slower. So again, read the labels if you want to get these protein supplements, assuming you tolerate dairy well, because again, these are dairy based. I think these are probably the two most gold standard proteins to get. And carbohydrate and protein combined are really optimal for repair. So again, a really tough workout. We definitely want to get, that protein in our systems, again, between that 10 to 30 minute window. I really like whey if we tolerate it well. I would recommend getting a bit of a carbohydrate in too. So again, if you're blending it with like a piece of fruit, like banana or some other things, that's a great way to get some carbohydrate. Or you can, have a shake with some almond milk or water and have a piece of fruit or a sandwich or something on the side, because it is a good idea to have a bit of the carbohydrate. It will produce like an insulin response and help us really absorb all of that nutrition that we really need from the protein. So factors influencing anabolism, that is protein building compared to catabolism, which is like the breakdown. So anabolism is very important to aid in like decrease recovery time and increase athletic gains. Adequate calories, total caloric intake must be adequate to make use for protein for anabolism rather than energy production. So it's really not just protein, but it's total calories too. Recovery, adequate rest and downtime, super important. Stress, these hormones play an enormous role in catabolism, and we don't want that to affect our gains. We'll get into stress and sleeping in a little bit, but it's really important to remember this. So we can be stressed both mentally and physically. You can overdo your exercise just as much as you can overdo your mental stress. So we really want to remember this because, we think we do more exercise and it should only help our gains, but not necessarily. And emphasize both eccentric and concentric training. to promote anabolism. So some of the most common challenges that student athletes face today are these here. Fearful of weight gain, maybe follow a calorie restriction, mindless eating on fast food, low nutrient dense snacks, overuse and reliance of supplements over real food, and insufficient rest and recovery time. So negative impacts to an athlete's sports performance. These seem to be what I've seen as the two biggest negative impacts for collegiate athletes that they deal with today: inconsistent and limited fueling options and poor recovery patterns. So inconsistent and limited fueling options, poor food choices, skipping meals, not planning ahead. This could be grabbing snacks in the vending machine, skipping breakfast, and not, planning your lunches, your dinners, the snacks that you have, which could be easy. Some of them you can just, a healthy apple you can just take with you instead of, choosing something at the vending machine. So in my experience with collegiate athletes, I've seen a lot of emphasis on weight management goals. And, unfortunately, we can't look at this the same way as performance. So we really do want to eat to match the output that we're giving with our sport. So the calories that we're feeding us, are really for performance and not for weight management. We really don't want to look at weight management and, training for an event or like a marathon the same way. They should be looked at separately. So the other negative impacts to performance is really poor recovery patterns. And this is often due to inadequate sleep and distractions. So please sleep, guys. I really can't stress that enough. Most adults need a minimum of 7 hours to just function regularly. I would argue that the more intense and challenging your exercises, you need much more than that. So if you wake up not rested with 7 hours, then you need more. That's one way to know. And, we want to listen to our bodies and understand its need for fuel, rest, hunger, satiety, all of these things. We're not really truly able to understand these signals if we are not sleeping appropriately. We want to evaluate the role that stressors play on us. Again, this is both mentally and physically. To improve our stress and sleep quality, it really helps to reduce our exposure to blue light late at night. So that is the light that we know, on the phones, computers, TVs, but it's also just the light on at home. So any exposure to blue light does affect our sleep quality. So it's the quality and the quantity that matters. And, again, if you are, not sleeping, if you are sleeping 7 hours and not feeling well rested, you likely need more. But work on these ways to reduce the blue light, reduce your stressors, reduce screen time before bed, and work on your sleep hygiene practice. And that's one way to really start getting in tune with listening to your body and evaluating the role of that these stressors can play, understanding the mind-body connection. So is your exercise too much? Is your mental stress too much? And are you eating right to support it? So in summary, here we are already. Wow. Nutrition plays a really essential role in sports. That's why it's actually often referred to as invisible training. And the nutritional practices of athletes are multifactorial. So it depends on the habits, culture, and nutritional knowledge of the athlete. You want to do the work to speak up, say something about to your coaches or whoever, and say, I want to learn more about this. What's going to help me feel my best, really fuel my performance. What will help me, improve my sleep quality, my stressors. What will help me recover from my workouts and really reduce DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness? What will help me, get to that place where I feel recovered from my workout quickly? And ultimately, it is the responsibility of the athlete to plan ahead, make the necessary adjustments, and fuel your body with the appropriate nutrition. That is all for today. Thank you all so much for having me. If you have any questions, let me see. I don't know if I saw any come in.
Yeah, there's a few in the chat here, Katie.
Okay.
Do you want me to just run through them with you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So can you touch on genetically modified fats and kind of explain, what role that has as far as nutritional needs and the difference between them and other types of fats?
Sure. So genetically modified fats are the same thing as like genetically modified anything out there. It's a processed food. It's created in the lab. So certainly anything that says like a hydrogenated oil or something like that is a genetically created fat. So those are trans fats, just with a different name. Definitely, we want they should be avoided. Hey, look, you have to live a little. Sometimes it's in something. But I think, compare and contrast and try to choose one that would not contain that.
And then you had touched on carbo loading. Are there any consequences of too many carbs for a high endurance sport?
Consequences of too many carbs. I mean, you want to eat to satiety. So I think that's where, carb loading for a couple of days is helpful versus like one day. It really depends on the sport, like how long you'd want to do it. So is there harm in too much? Not necessarily if you're eating to satiety. I think eating to satiety might not give you enough carbohydrate if you're doing it for one day. If that makes sense. I think that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And then kind of going back on the trans fats, do you have any tips on how to avoid trans fats, processed foods, anything that, we really shouldn't be putting in our bodies?
Yeah, definitely. So read nutrition labels, read ingredient lists. Ingredient lists might be even more important than the nutrition label because it tells you, where that protein and the carbohydrate and the fat and the calories and all those things are actually coming from. I think we're told to read the nutrition labels when in fact, we have, 20 grams of protein, but what type? Where is it coming from? Like that I think matters much more. So read the ingredient lists. They are written in descending order, meaning the very first ingredient in there is the highest and the last is the lowest. So certainly if any of them say hydrogenated oil, something we can't pronounce, it's likely a weird chemical, they're best avoided. Also, good rule of thumb, the fewer ingredients, probably the better. If it's a real whole food, like an apple, for example, it probably doesn't have a nutrition label. It doesn't need to explain itself.
And kind of on that, some people have said when you go grocery shopping to stay, on the outside of the store and avoid the aisles. Is that something that you think is beneficial, something people should stick to, or is that kind of a
yeah, shopping the perimeter of the grocery store? I do. I think that's also a good rule of thumb. But also just don't shop at eye level. So go down the other aisles, but just don't shop at eye level. Look up and down. It might take more time, but I think it's a really good way to ensure that we are getting the most nutrition possible. They're there, so we just have to look for them. And really, I think when it comes to what we want to look for in terms of grams and percentages of like the macronutrients or the micronutrients, compare and contrast. So yeah.
And one last question on here. Can oxidative stress affect sports performance? And is there a food group that would help with that stress or supplement specifically?
Can oxidative stress affect sports performance?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Carrie? Nope.
Hold on, I'm getting there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm a big biohacker and stuff. So like I know just like with the times and stuff, you know, everyone's stressed out. There's so much work. And I'm talking about this not even just from you know, athletics, you know, our athletes. I'm talking about even because we have a lot of staff on here too. And you know, is there something that, you know, like kind of like a feel good food, feel good supplement, you know, whatever. I mean, I know you a lot of people, they'll go to the doctor, they'll be like, oh, well, the doctor put me on vitamin D. I know more people that are on vitamin D right now, you know? And so, I mean, I take a supplement, like I said, I'm a biohacker. So I take a supplement that I feel saved my life.
Okay.
You know, I want something that, you know, that these people can have that's going to save their life now, because again, stress from the students, they're not having an athlete, they're not having sports right now. You know, they want to work out, but they don't feel like working out, you know, so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, chronic, you know, oxidative damage to your entire system is really like, it's happening, you know, and unfortunately people don't talk about this enough. It's really an inflammatory response. So I would certainly recommend like reducing any type of like artificially created or processed food in general to help with any inflammatory response. If you do think that this might be you, you know, perhaps you're taxing your adrenal system a bit too much. So this might be another topic that we could go over one day. But I do really think that is that mind-body connection. So the adrenal system is being taxed. I mean, you know, nowadays all the time for many of us. It's these chronic stressors. Also, if you get any labs done, if you can check out your lab value, see your C-reactive protein, that is an inflammatory lab marker, which usually indicates a lot of oxidative stress. So I think in general, to reduce that, reduce stressors mentally and physically, eat real foods, eat foods you do well with. Unfortunately, there are a ton of foods out there that are very healthy that people just don't do well with. So listen to your body, you know. Do eggs work for you? Maybe they don't. You know, that's one of those foods where I think it's great. I think that there's a ton of nutrition. I think we should all eat it, but not everyone is doing well with it.
And that's the thing too, people should experiment with foods too, because like for me, I'm not like, maybe I don't like scrambled eggs or fried eggs, but I love hard-boiled eggs.
Totally.
You know, like, and same thing with like spinach. They might not like, you know, fresh spinach, but they might like sauteed spinach, you know, like you have to experiment, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, you know, part of being an adult, which I think in college, you're really starting to, you know, feel like that. You know, we gotta like try new foods, and we have to be willing to experiment and, you know, try new things and get nutrition. I mean, the most ideal optimal diet would be a really large variety of, you know, good quality organic grass-fed animal protein, a really large variety of fruits and vegetables. Probably not realistic, right? But that's why it's a great idea to, you know, switch it up when we can. Look for good quality, look for real foods.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I think that is it, unless anybody else has any questions they'd like to ask.
I just have a comment. I guess tonight when I go shopping at the supermarket, I got to see this perimeter versus aisle thing that's going on. I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah. Well, Whitney, thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, so shop the perimeter of the grocery store. That's a good way to kind of avoid the packaged, boxed foods. But if you do go down those aisles, or just in general, don't shop at eye level.
Nevis, look for that pasta that's sitting on top of the ceiling, you know?
Yeah, I guess
And
so.
grab that for a special event.
And make sure you ask for help and don't try to reach for it yourself.
Caitlin, I have not so much a question, but a comment. Good information, so thank you.
You're welcome.
I attended programs like this in the past, and before I had anything like this, I remember coaching a D2 program, And just to try and keep it short, we played a tournament on a hot day in September, and the next day in the finals, the girls looked like their death warmed over. I mean, they were trying so hard, but just couldn't move. And then sometime after that, I attended a clinic with sports nutrition and hydration. And that's when I start paying more attention to this, being exposed to it. And what we did is made sure that like at least an hour before you played, you had the sports drink. You sat down for at least an hour as a team, and you had your turkey sandwich or something like that before you competed. And then as soon as you got off the court, make sure that we had a sports drink to get the electrolytes back and have a peanut butter sandwich. I used to actually make the peanut butter sandwiches, and I know there's the allergy thing you got to worry about, but I would actually go to the store, buy the loaf of bread, jarred peanut butter, and as soon as it came off the court, hey, stretch it, here's your peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah.
And I seen a big difference in recovery, and just, you didn't always win, but I seen a big difference in that.
Totally. And I mean, you can see it on the athlete, when they come out and they're completely depleted, you're like, oh no, you can tell.
Yeah, no, I mean, since I was exposed to that, that's what I've been telling the athletes and hoping, now at Baruch that they could take those steps, not just have a bagel, make sure you have something good before you compete.
Yeah,
and have the recovery as well.
exactly. Yeah. Awesome.
All right, well, if that is it, I want to thank you, Katie, so much for this presentation. It was great. We've got a lot of good feedback in the chat, if you have a chance to read it. And thank you everybody for coming.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, everyone. Take care.
Take care. Great job.
Thank you.